He's still logging in. Well, that's his background. There he is. You're muted. Unmute yourself. You're on Catherine's computer, aren't you?
Yeah.
There you
Of
are.
course. At least I have the right name today. It doesn't say Catherine, but anyways.
Daughter. All right, George, I was just getting ready to take over for you, so I'm happy that you're here.
Okay. Just bear with me while I find my presentation.
Let's see. Patricia is from Key Biscayne Community School. Victoria has been a president for all of a week.
Oh boy.
Victoria, I did 5 different startups last week, and I forget, honey, which one you're with.
It's okay.
You are with
Barbara Hawkins.
Barbara Hawkins.
It's very rare for you, Madam President, to forget at school.
You were not with me last week. I did Bermudas on Monday. I did North County on Monday. I did Barbara Hawkins on Wednesday. I did Jesse McCrary and Carroll City Elementary on Thursday.
Wow.
So yeah, all those checks you have to write for me?
Yeah.
One of them's going to Victoria.
Okay. They will be written tonight after our meeting as I drive over.
And Antonia, where are you from?
I post myself for the position of treasurer on Debonair Arcade Center.
Debonair, around the corner from me. Cool. I'm over here in Kendall.
Nice, nice.
Absolutely. Cecilia, excellent. Where are you from?
GK Sable Palm, treasure.
Sable Palm.
I just admitted somebody else.
For 3 years.
And Cynthia Oxidine, I've known Cynthia for years. Cynthia's obviously with Miami Norland. Hi, Cynthia.
I'm doing double duty work.
I hear you. Most of us are.
Madam President, did you go over a little bit of what we're covering tonight, or I'm doing that?
You go right ahead. It's all yours.
Okay, I'm sharing my screen. Basically, what we're gonna talk about tonight is budgeting for the end of the year. Normally, I would tell you that budgeting for the end of the school year wouldn't be something that you're doing right now. So, but let's just start with some budget basics. And this is considering we have some new people into what it is PTA now. I would just say some very basic things about budget. And it's basically the treasurer of each PTA should serve as a budget chair committee, as a chair of the budget committee rather, and all of your executive committee members are members of the budget committee. And remember, there's a difference between executive committee and executive board. Executive committee are the members that are elected. It will be your president, your secretary, your treasurer, and any vice presidents. Your executive board will be your chairs and everybody else that's in there. So your budget committee is basically made up of your executive committee. And if you have enough people to do a budget committee, you can add other people as well. Once you develop a budget, it needs to be approved by your membership at the first general meeting of the school year. And then when you're having a budget committee, and again, this is very generalized. I just threw this in there just for, as the slide says, is budget basics. When you're getting ready to develop your budget for the following year, you should have the previous year final budget, the completed audit for the previous year, your proposed calendar of activities or events for the following year, and any plans of work or basically what each vice president plans to do. The budget is a working document and should be reviewed mid-year as fundraising or expenses are adjusted. Changes to the budget will be made by the executive board or the budget committee and must be approved by your members at a general meeting. This usually happens once a year around January, but this has been a very not strange, but different year to everything else, and we've had some changes along the way. I can tell you from my very own experience as treasurer of my own school where my daughter goes, that we recently had to make some changes to the budget because there were some activities that we didn't think we would be able to do, and we ended up doing. So it's happening more than perhaps we want to, because at this point of the year we shouldn't be doing this. So when can we make changes to the budget? As I said before, the budget is usually adjusted sometime in the midpoint of the school year. However, it can be amended anytime during the school year as long as you follow correct procedures. And I'm just reading from my slide. I wrote this. So during this school year, it has been difficult to plan ahead for activities and events. And what was seeming impossible not too long ago is now a possible reality. And what I mean by that is just what I said before. There are things that we couldn't do that we didn't think we could do a few months ago, and now they're doable. So we might have taken them at one point or another out of our budget, and now we find out that we are doing these things. And that's exactly the situation I found myself in just about 3 weeks ago. When amending the budget, we must first consider if it's a good idea to do this towards the end of the school year. Okay, and we need to take into account how it'll impact your year-end finances. There's no hard rule that says that you must spend all your money at the end of a year, but there's also no hard rule that says that you need to save it all. So you have to balance that, and also how whatever decisions you make now in your budget are going to affect the incoming board, whether you're on that board or not. So because there will be other new members, and you have to make sure that you leave them in a solid financial position so they can start the year running. Not only that, but at one point or another, you should have a summer budget already in place. So there's going to be some expenses that will take place during the summer. You should have accounted for those. So if I'm speaking too fast, do we have any questions up until now?
George, one thing before we start talking about amending the budget, when it comes to summer expenses, don't forget that your summer expenses may include things that start at the beginning of next year, that welcome back breakfast, the spiritware you might have to purchase prior to school beginning. Agendas, anything that might come before that budget is approved in the fall. For us, that's all the way until the middle of September, because the first general meeting that the county council has is not until September 15th. So we have to make sure that everything we're going to spend up until that meeting is included in our summer budget.
And that we have the money for it as well before we start spending it all. And Madam President, feel free to jump in at any time, considering that 99.9% of the things that I know about this, I learned from you. So I'm sure I'll leave something out. So amending the budget, and that's what we call it. We amend the budget. We don't change it. It's called amending. That is the correct terminology for it. It's a process that begins, again, with your executive committee or your budget committee. There's a few steps. First, we need to identify what is the item that is being changed or added, and assign a value to it. You need to know before you even go into this if you're going to spend $1,000, $2,000, or $100. We need to review and the reasons for this change. We need to make sure there are good reasons. Just, I don't want to cite any examples because every school is different, but just because all of a sudden somebody decided that they needed something doesn't mean that you need to run and do it. And I don't say that speaking ill of the schools or anything, but there'll be many times towards the end of the year that things come up that could be handled the following year by the following board. So you need to really, really think about if this is something that is needed right now to be done by your board, or is it something that can be handled by the incoming board? You need to ensure this additional expense will fit with the current financial position of the PTA. In other words, if you have $4,000 in the bank and this is going to cost you $3,800, this might not be a good idea because you're going to leave $200 in the bank for incoming guys. That's taking in also without taking into account your summer budget. That money should be allocated already. And as Sandra said, your summer budget has got your welcome back breakfast, you have agendas, and you have spirit wear, and all those things are pretty inflexible. It's not something you can move to further out. You need to have agendas. You need, for the most part, to have some kind of event welcoming the teachers back to school, and you need to have some shirts to sell. All this needs to take place in day one. So this is something that you have to account for. This is not something you can take down the road. They should be in your current budget and they should be handled by the current board. Your budget amendment must be ratified at a general meeting by the membership. Sometimes you might not have a general meeting scheduled right now, but you can schedule one, and you can have a general meeting for the sole purpose of amending the budget. You need to be very specific, and when you send out the invitation for the meeting, you need to be specific. This meeting is for the purpose of ratifying an amendment to the budget. So if you don't have a general meeting schedule, or you don't cover all these events, you can do a meeting just for this very purpose. And a general meeting like this, you could pretty much just go through everything real quick and just work on the amendment. When your budget amendment is ratified by the general membership, then it becomes part of your budget. It must be listed in your budget, and then we can proceed to spend the money from there. Any questions there?
I have a
This is
question.
big.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to drive
Go
and
ahead.
I cannot raise my hand. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
The summer budget. I have questions about the summer budget. But for example, the agendas, you're talking about the teacher agendas or the students' agendas?
Student agendas. The ones that your PTA will sell.
Some PTAs gift those to their students, and some PTAs buy planners for their teachers as well.
Okay. So it could be both. In the
Thank
cases,
you. Yeah, we do both. We do both.
Okay.
Thank you. I just want to make sure.
That's pretty cool. Just don't tell the teachers are our school. Any questions on this, on the budget? I mean, this is what we're presenting here is no different than what we do normally to make any changes to the budget. The reason we wanted to talk about it a little bit is because, again, it's been a very strange year. A lot of things are happening now that we didn't plan for them to happen. And we need to make sure that if we're going to spend this money, do we do it for the right reasons and we do it the correct way? Because you have an audit coming, you have a new board coming in, and we need to follow this procedure. Even if you didn't have an audit, a new board coming in, you still need to do things the right way. That's our job. So any questions on when it comes to budget?
You know, I can't technically raise my hand because I'm a host.
Our question? Oh,
Yeah.
God.
This is not a quiz. You're not being evaluated. So my principals come to me and they want us to sponsor the teacher luncheon on Friday, but we never even put teacher appreciation in our budget. What do I tell my principal? And by the way, we don't really even have the money.
No.
Good job. Maybe not this year, next year. Yeah,
Maybe
I
the
mean,
longer sentence.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but we can't put it in our budget. It's too short notice.
there you go.
No,
Yeah, don't be afraid to tell the principal no. It's hard, especially if you are an employee of the school. It's very hard, but they have to realize you've got rules to follow, just like they'd have rules to follow.
And it's also one of the reasons why you have a budget. So you have a guideline on what to spend. There's a reason why your budget is approved by your general membership, because they agree how you're going to spend that money. And it kind of takes away that it takes away that responsibility from you. You are pretty much following rules. And when you explain it this way, most people will understand. You're explaining you're following a set of rules that have been in place for a while. You have a budget that was approved by your membership. You cannot just change it overnight. Okay, who wants to talk about the audit? Since we're pretty much through with budget. Go ahead, Ms. Agostini, I see you.
I have another question about the budget, sorry. So for example, I have a line item that has been approved by the membership. And I just got hit with a bill. This is an actual thing that's going on. I just got hit with a bill that we from 2019. There is plenty of money in that line item, which is for the copy machine. There is money to cover for that bill. And that bill has been a PTA line item in the budget since I've been involved, which I would say at least for 10 years. Even though it's from 2019, the bill, because they said that due to COVID, they only sent us the bill now, can that bill be paid if there's money on that line item?
I'm in agreement, George.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes, it's a valid expense. The PTA expected to pay it. And because of the pandemic, it's being paid particularly late. But I would not penalize the company that's billing you now. If they did the work, if it's a valid expense.
It's copiers. Those were copies that were made in the beginning of the year. I know it's not this school year, the previous one, but
Right.
and it doesn't require an amendment. There's enough money there, so I'm okay.
Nope, as long as you're not using up the money you intended to pay for copiers this year.
No, there is
Then
enough money to pay all the way to June 30th. And then the summer budgets, the lease agreement has to be for the summer budget money, because technically you're not supposed to use any money from this year's budget to pay for the summer expenses. That's the summer budget money, correct?
Correct.
So yeah, thank you.
And also we prepare, or perhaps add a note already to when you have the receipts for this, in case somebody in the audit committee should have questions on it, and because somebody, our eyes will notice and say, hey, this is from last year. What is this doing here? And just, I would recommend that ahead of time you add an explanation, short. Doesn't have to be a really long explanation, but
Okay.
just in case it does come up.
Perfect.
Because
Can
then
you
you will get that phone call at 8:30 in the morning and you don't know why they're calling you.
I know. And over the summer too. Can you explain a little bit more about principals' internal funds? Because I've read the manual a few times and we have donated to the principal's internal funds, but I don't want this to become an issue. So
I defer to Ms. West Tully on this one.
And I'm sorry, I don't mean to hijack your meeting. It's just that this is a
That's okay.
budget and
No,
we are going over like this all budget issues right now.
Right, and I get that. Then the amount that you give your principal should be nominal compared to your budget. In other words, for a small school, you know, $100 maybe all that should be given to the principal for their discretionary funds. For a larger school, it may be as high as 1,000. I wouldn't go over 1,000. The principal does get money in their budget from the school system that is at their discretion to spend. They don't need to pad it with money from the PTA, because a lot of times if they've got a project they want to do, they're going to come to the PTA to add it to their budget on its own as its
Yeah.
own line item. It is not in our bylaws to allow principals to get a big chunk of our funds for them to pay whatever they want. It just does not meet our bylaws. So if
Yes.
they ask why, you're going to hold them to a tighter rein than in the past. Say it's been pointed out. This is my favorite phrase. Here you go, guys. Here's your out. It has been brought to my attention that funds made by the PTA must be spent for PTA purposes. If we just give it to you, Mr. or Mrs. Principal, I have no assurance that they were spent for PTA, you know, under the guidelines of the bylaws.
Okay, and I promise this is my last question. Projects that started this year, we fundraised for 2 years in a row for the awning. So we have enough money on the budget for the awning. We went out, we got 3 proposals. We finally went with one. COVID hit, we got to canceled. Long story short, we are in the engineering process of it. This board, it's no longer gonna go on to the, most of people are not gonna go over. Do you suggest we earmark this money at our last meeting, or do we just leave at the line item saying awning project?
These are restricted funds. If
If I
So let me-
earmark, they are restricted. If
Right.
if I don't, they are not.
right, so here's the thing. If you solicited these funds for a particular project, if when you went to your parents, you said, this,
Yes.
whatever we're doing right now, you're giving money to the awning project. No board can redesignate those funds without going back to the donors and getting permission.
Even if it's not earmarked.
Well, it was earmarked by the fact that they donated it for a particular purpose.
Okay,
So I'll give a, for example, county council has had $10,000 on the books for 13, 14 years now, George. That was for a particular project. Unfortunately, it's going to
About-
cost, it's going to cost us $40,000 to do the project. And we've never been able to raise another 30,000. We're going to go back to the donors and ask for us to be able to use the money a different way, or they get the money back.
okay. Thank you.
Right. Let's move on to the audit process.
Whoa. That slide should have looked better. Okay. These are basic
We will
rules
share
for,
this out, right?
I'm sorry?
We will share this out, right? We're going to share this PowerPoint.
Yes, yes, we'll send it out. Yeah, I set it up as an independent. Yes, yes, absolutely. As soon as I check it for any misspellings or anything. No, I'm kidding, I already checked. So,
George, literally, they put a new audit form on the website today.
okay, so we will have to add that to the presentation or point on order to get a new audit form. Did it change a lot, or this is not the right time to ask.
Actually, what I used it today for another school. The cool thing is when you put in your name and all that information at the header on page 1, it autofills on page 2.
Okay. We are moving forward. Anyways, this is the compliance for Florida, the audit compliance for Florida PTA. According to your bylaws, our bylaws, the completed audit is due to Florida PTA by August 31st. When your audit is completed, you scan it and email a signed copy, signed and dated copy to Florida PTA, and you have the email address there. You should be getting a reply confirmation. And just remember that they're getting a lot of audits at the same time. So if it might take a couple of days for you to get like a reply, or it might take a couple of weeks in case anything needs to be fixed. They're usually pretty good about getting back to you on this. So, but just know that it's a time where everybody's sending their stuff in. So it might take a little bit of time to get around to it. So when do we do the audit? The audit is due as soon as you receive the bank statement for June, which will be June 30th. And your fiscal year runs from July, for example, the fiscal year for this year runs from July 1st, 2020 through June 31st, 2021. Your treasurer does not take possession of the books until after the audit has been completed. And then your treasurer, your incoming treasurer or new treasurer must review and sign the completed audit report before taking custody of the PTA books. This is to protect the treasurer. If you're taking over something and you're not reading it and it's not completed, some of that responsibility transfers on to you. And it's very procedural, but it's also a good way to make sure you don't assume any liability that belongs to somebody else. How do we get to an audit committee? The executive board selects the audit committee of usually 3 members, or hire an accountant, a professional auditor. And this is pretty much outlined in your local unit bylaws, Article 7, Section 5, as it's listed there. You should consider selecting and appointing the audit committee at your last PTA at the annual meeting, general meeting. So the name of the committee members are entered in the meeting minutes and they become part of the record. And prior to the last meeting, recruit qualified members to serve on the committee. In other words, going into your general meeting, please have some people in mind already, or at least have spoken to some of them. I mean, we want to make sure they're when we say they're qualified, doesn't mean that they have to be accountants or doctors, but are people that are generally willing to participate in this process and are somewhat comfortable about around numbers. Not everybody is. So there's nothing good, wrong or right with it. It's just to make sure that are people that are willing to participate and that will be comfortable doing this process. Because they'll be going through numbers, they'll be going through bank statements. There's a few things to do there.
George,
Yeah.
this is one thing that school staff can do. This is not considered handling money. I've had more than one principal serve on an audit committee before. So don't be afraid to ask if any staff might be willing to serve on the audit committee, as long as they are PTA members.
Yes. Okay, who can and cannot serve on the audit committee? An audit committee should consist of 3 members who have had no access to the PTA funds, check, or bank accounts in the period of the audit. The treasurer, president, and signers on the bank account during the period of the audit cannot serve on the committee. This is a pretty obvious statement, but you'll be surprised how many times we kind of forget that somebody's a signer on the bank account And a signer doesn't have to be the president or the treasurer, or somebody else, and they end up in the audit committee. So it's absolutely important that we take all those things into consideration. The treasurer isn't a member of the audit committee for all the right reasons, but should be available during the audit to answer questions. In other words, the treasurer should know that the audit committee is meeting next Wednesday and between 10 a.m. and noon, and that he might get a call, he or she might get a call just to find out what, a question or something. The treasurer should make themselves available to answer questions. And basically any questions that the audit committee has, we shouldn't be offended, or treasurers shouldn't be offended because somebody asked him a question on how money was spent on a receipt. It's part of the audit process. The IRS does the same thing, but they're a lot meaner about it. The duties of the audit committee are to review the financial records and certify the accuracy of the books, ensures that that the funds are being managed properly and according to the budget. Part of the process is we calculate the gross receipts and expenses so we can report it to the IRS on your 990. And you'll see when you look at the audit form, and I didn't include one here, which was great considering that it might have changed. You will see there's room for that to add. You're not going to have to find a place for it. It's very, Patricia.
You want me to bring it up, or we can bring it up after your PowerPoint?
You can bring it up now if you have it, just so we can take a look at it.
They included a new explanation page at the front. And reminding you that the audit needs to be done before you file your taxes. And then what tax forms you use. So what's new here is it used to be you'd have to type your name and your local ID number here, all your contact information here, and then you'd have to go down and type it all over again here on the top of the second page. They've linked them now. And not only that, but if you type in, look at that. They've actually put calculations in there now. However, they do not carry through to all of the lines because they want you to make sure that you're following the right information. So you still have to fill in by hand your book balance and your statement balances. So a little bit of calculating now. But otherwise, nothing new has been added. They still require all these signatures. Talk about signatures, because that's usually where we get messed up.
Hello, Sandra. I have a question for you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm in Sam's picking up stuff for tomorrow's teacher appreciation. Quick question. Last year, the treasurer, her report was $24 off, and the Florida PTA had brought up my attention, but they said it was okay because it was too small of amount. But anything like that drives me bananas. And what it was, she sent in the wrong report. I do not want to start off this year. So do I just put that adjustments? Is there some place on this form where I can put that adjustment? Because that's going to drive me drinking. I can't do it.
Okay. So what you can do, yes, you can. Not directly, but if your audit numbers are starting at a different point than your last audit, what you can do is at the bottom where it says you've got attached findings, recommendations to this form, you're going to put in a note that there was an error in the previous audit. This audit's starting $24 off, you know what I mean? And the error was in calculation, right?
Right, it was in calculations, but what it was, she sent the wrong form. She said she had sent the wrong form and then she had sent over the new one, but the other one was already signed by everybody and sent to Florida PTA.
Got it. So
So do I just attach the new form and say this is
Yes.
the adjustment? Okay,
So you would check, we've audited the books and found the following problems or make these suggestions. And you attach, you know, the corrected audit form from the previous year.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm looking at the chat box questions as well, George.
Oh.
Somebody had asked why, if the fiscal year is July to June, is the budget September to August? Well, the budget really is July to June. However, since we don't have a general meeting until August or September, those expenses that you spend at the beginning of the year have to be approved by the membership. And so it's a catch-22 problem. You haven't had a membership meeting yet, but you've got expenses that have to be paid. So we get them approved by the previous year's membership as summer expenses. But everything that's in summer expenses gets rolled into the new budget as the current year's expenses, so that when we compare the budget to the finance reports and to the audit at the end of the year, everything matches up. Does that make sense? Somebody's asking, do you suggest we hire a CPA for the audit? If you're in the 990 easy range or up, which means that you make more than 50,000 a year, especially if you're in the long form range, which means you make more than 200,000 a year, yes. Plan on hiring an auditor, a CPA. We are currently in the market for a new CPA ourselves. So we're going to use the 9 schools that do 990 easies and long forms to see if we can find a good auditor amongst that group. But make sure they know what they're doing, that they are familiar with nonprofits, and that they do enter you as being under a general tax 2149 form, because I see a lot of them that do not enter that.
Do we hire the same CPA we hired to do our taxes to do the audit, or do I have to hire somebody else?
Oh, to do the audit. Here's the problem with the audit. Most certified public accountants will not fill out the Florida PTA form. And Florida PTA requires their form. They'll do an audit for you, but they're not going to fill out the form that Florida PTA wants. It's rare. If you got one, let me know. All right, so the follow-up question, is the summer budget a separate budget or included in the original PTA budget? It is included in your original budget. It's just like a separate category. So you know how you've got, student support, you've got teacher support, you've got your operating expenses, you'd also have your summer expenses. All right, back to you, Mr. Montes.
Okay, so
Can I-
go ahead.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Sandra, what you just said, okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around while I'm standing here in line. The summer budget, I thought the budget was closed out for the year after the audit is done. And then anything after the audit would be on the New Year's.
So you can't do that because you're not going to be able to approve a new budget until you are able to have a general membership meeting.
Correct.
And you definitely can't do that until after mid-August when school goes back into session. So unless
Okay.
you plan on doing absolutely zero business, which I don't know many PTAs that don't have some kind of an expense, You know, you've got to kind of just plan on those expenses.
Okay, so what, okay, so
So your
I guess I'm
budget,
trying to,
let me
I
see
guess
if
I'm
I can
trying to
explain
get,
it. Cynthia,
okay.
your budget doesn't close with your finances. Your
Okay.
budget is your budget until your next budget is approved.
Okay. So the audit, so if anything is spent after June, for instance, that's when we have our last meeting, that
Correct.
will go on the next audit. Am I correct?
It'll go on the next audit. And hopefully you've already got permission to spend the money on the previous budget.
Okay, gotcha. Yes, we did
That's
get
what I
our
mean.
budget approved.
Right, the budget doesn't necessarily follow the fiscal year. Because don't forget,
Okay.
we have convention in July.
Yes.
And convention is going to be hybrid this year. Virtual is only $90 per person.
Okay.
So I hope everyone's budgeting for that. All right, really this time.
I didn't hear you. Oh, I'm back.
You're back.
Okay. So I don't remember we went through all of this, but the last couple of steps is we need to reconcile the bank statements to the PTA ledger or the checkbook or however we keeping it. Usually should be the checkbook. And then the audit committee usually writes, it's not absolutely necessary, but if they have some comments and some recommendations, they should add that to the audit paperwork. It should be written in a document and obviously share with everybody. And this is some of the questions we get the most. Can the incoming treasurer, there's an extra comma there, can the incoming treasurer serve on the audit committee? And it's yes, the answer is yes, as long as that new treasurer did not have access to the PTA funds, checkbook, or bank account during the period of the audit. In other words, your current treasurer, even if it's transferring to the next year, cannot serve on the audit committee. Or anybody that was, if the current treasurer was, the incoming treasurer is somebody that was a check signer, they cannot be part of the audit committee. This was a good question. Our PTA completed an interim audit on January 31st, 2020. Will the annual year end audit be conducted for just the remaining 5 months from February through June? In other words, since we had an audit that went from July to January, do we need to just do the audit from February through June? And the answer is no, absolutely not. Your audit must be for the 12 months of your fiscal year period. And this is something that we've learned along the way from experience. This part of it, it's usually when we have treasurers that go missing, is what can you do if your treasurer books and records cannot be located? Your audit committee will summarize the bank statements. Even if you don't have the books or a treasurer's book, you still have access to the bank statement, so you're able to every month to do the start, the end, and what happened in between. And there's a bank account summary Excel worksheet that was available from Florida PTA to summarize this information, or you can do one yourself. If the treasurer resigns or if we suspect any fraud was committed, do not close the bank account until you receive copies of all the statements, because once you close that bank account, you will not have access to those records. So even if something went wrong, please don't close the account. Just make sure that you get all the information that you require, and then you do that.
You can put a hold on the account. You can freeze the account so that nothing else can happen to the account. But please do not close the account.
So this was part of the presentation we did last year, because obviously a lot of things changed, and we call it audits in the time of COVID. So I think we might be closer to back to where we were before, but there's just know there's three options. There's an in-person meeting, there's an electronic committee meeting, and there's the we'll take the books option. And I'm gonna go through all three of them real quick. If we agree to meet in person, it's important that we use all the guidelines, and I'm gonna repeat the same things you've heard a million times over. Use social distancing, wear masks, keep hands clean, sanitize any items that you share during the meetings, and if possible, meet outdoors. We developed this at the time where there was no vaccine, so things have changed a little bit since then. But nonetheless, as we're all probably doing nowadays, we should keep all these things in mind when we meet, not just for the audit, but for everything else. Then we have another option. It's we set up this what we call the electronic audit committee meeting, and we set up a virtual meeting. The treasurer is available to register or attend, or be available via phone. Usually, I would recommend that you keep them available in case you need to ask them, so that way all the members of the audit committee can speak freely without having to worry about what they say or how they say it. Before the meeting, either the treasurer or the audit committee chair completes the financials on page 2 of the audit form and shares with the other ones via email. This is just so we can get some advanced work done. During the meeting, we will share the documents with all and complete the following sections together. Sections on page 1 and answer the questions on page 1 and sections A and B, and write any audit comments or recommendations required. After the meeting, when the report is completed, all you do is correct the original documents and rotate the forms to each member committee so they can sign them. You return the PTA books and the completed audit form to the treasurer to get the remaining officer signatures, which would be the president and the treasurer. And again, you scan a copy of the assigned and dated audit report and send it to Florida PTA. And then the option, the last option, it's pretty much somewhat the same. The treasurer must be available. Either the treasurer or the first auditor should be completing the financials on page 2. And then what happens is the treasurer will provide the books to the first auditor. They will complete all the information required, and then they'll pass on the books to the next person, to the third auditor, and then back to the president and the treasurer so they can sign everything. So basically, what would happen is the same thing as you would if you were meeting in person. You just, after you finish some parts of it, you pass it on to the next person so they can review it and they can sign off on it. And ideally, you'll have a final meeting just to talk about what's going on, any recommendations, any changes, but that can be a virtual meeting. Okay. Any questions on the regulations for the audit meeting or anything else so far?
Yes, Mr. Montes, Anthony Maya here. I assume I'm gonna take over the treasurer of Debonair. So if you could help me out, do a little recap of what you just mentioned. I'm not supposed to take over the books until the audit has been completed. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
You're absolutely right.
And since I was not on the board for the previous year, I could form part of the audit committee.
I would strongly recommend that if you're elected treasurer or if you're running for the position of treasurer, that you are part of that audit committee. This will give
Okay.
you an idea of what's taking place in the last year or so.
Okay, and the taxes that have to be filed, that is done by the previous treasurer, or that is something that I would take care of after the audit is done? How does that work? Because I'm completely new to this. I've been involved with the school for many years, but always as a volunteering parent or a room mom, but never inside the PTSA board.
Technically, it should have been done already. The taxes should have been done already. And
Okay.
if they haven't been done, you should have asked for an extension and should be looking to doing them right now.
Okay.
So by the time you take over, all this should be done.
Okay. And okay, so let's say our last meeting, it's now on the 19th of May, and that's when they're gonna do their elections.
Mhm.
So right, and that meeting is where they're supposed to elect the audit committee. And then that audit committee will set up a date to do the audit of the books, right?
Yes.
Okay, so how far after that is when I take over the books? Right after the audit is done and everything is in order?
Yes.
Okay, okay, perfect.
Not before.
So
Not before you. If you are part of the audit committee, obviously you will have somewhat of a preview of what has taken place and what expects you once you take over. But officially, and when it comes to doing any official work of the treasurer, not until after the audit is completed. And
Okay,
again, it's procedures, but it also protects you from anything that has taken place before. And when I say this is not like happens every week or something, but it's happened before, and it's meant to protect. We're all volunteers. We all do everything with the best intentions possible, and there shouldn't be any reasons why we pick up on something that somebody else did wrong.
okay, okay, great. And in the case, hopefully not, but if there's anything wrong with the books, what would happen there?
you call us.
You call
Okay.
us.
Okie doke. We'll do. Hopefully I don't have to.
But
Ladies and gentlemen, I can't stress this enough. Don't try to go it alone. We've got a lot of experience. And here's the thing is if you try to go it alone when you find a problem, I guarantee that whoever's on the other side of that is going to call us, is going to call Florida PTA, and is going to try to get on the other side. I'm looking right now and I don't see where Devonair filed their 2019 taxes. I'm a little scared. And by the way, you are using a CPA. for
Okay.
Devonair.
Okay.
I can
Those
look
are
up-
things that I don't know. I don't know into the mess that I'm getting into, but I'm doing it with the best intentions ever.
don't scare her yet, Madam President.
No. Devonair is
No.
not a small PTA. They do a fair amount of business and you guys do your books professionally, which is good.
Okay, so I'll find out the information that I need to get. I believe that I have to start stepping in a little bit earlier just to make sure that everything is in a good position. But definitely, if I need your help, I'll reach out to you guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Welcome. So looks like I'm running out of time, so I'm gonna cover this real quick. Steps in the audit process, I'm gonna skip through each detail, but we need to fill out all the forms complete every little box in there. Every box needs to be checked, whether it's yes or no. Every little space is meant to be filled out. And I know that sounds like I sound like a professor when you're taking a test, but this is what it's meant to happen. That's where all those things are there for.
And if it doesn't apply, it's okay to add a third box on your own that says not applicable.
Yeah, don't, the idea is not to leave it up to somebody else to guess what your intentions or what you were trying to say. Because then you will get that phone call. Or you will have to explain it, or you will get a phone call from one of us or something, or Florida PTA.
In the last
And
couple of years, they've actually been reading them.
yes, I noticed that. So here's some of the things that may come out of an audit. The bank statements were not reviewed, reconciled. They weren't signed by a non-signer as required. The checkbook was provided, but did not keep a running balance. There were no separate bank statements for square deposits. There was no cash verification forms, things like that. Little details like that, that need to be documented. And those are findings. And then you got recommendations, which is what the audit committee recommends. You might just find that a lot of the checks were not signed by two people. Your recommendation is make sure that your signatures are required in every check. Incoming, I'm going to read this first one because it's important. Incoming treasurers should review the audit and receive training based on the guidance offered in Florida PTA Kit of Materials. This is something that should be in every audit for when we have an incoming treasurer that has not had that experience before. We will, Dade County Council will, at the very beginning of the year, and I say this for all positions, Madam President, at the very beginning of the year, we will offer training. As a matter of fact, we have training coming up very soon for new officers. There's not just printed materials that you have access to, or online materials, if you will, digital, that you have access online, but you have us as a resource. We will be doing training. We will be having presentations. Matter of fact, what we're sharing today comes from a presentation. We have a session at the beginning of the year called Money Matters, which is strictly for financial resources and just to share a lot of the things that we've learned along the year. So again, never be afraid to call on us. Sometimes people are hesitant because they think that if they call us, they're going to get in trouble. Nope. We're volunteers just like you. We're parents just like everybody else. And we started this probably because our kids were in a SEND school. So a lot of the things that might happen to you, we've already heard about. So never be shy to call us. I mean, I personally got involved because my wife being president. So that's how I ended up here. So we've all been involved. We've heard some horror stories along the way. So I don't think that anything that you encounter will scare any of us, and we'll definitely find a way to fix it. For the most part. And in repeating myself again, what happened to the audit completed report? The treasurer files the original audit report with the PTA, permanent records. It becomes part of your treasurer's manual. The new treasurer must present the audit report at the next general membership meeting, and it's adopted by the members. In other words, the first general meeting of the year, the treasurer or the audit committee, but usually the treasurer will present the audit, and if there's any recommendations, they will share that with the membership. And then you forward a copy of it to Florida PTA. This one kind of snuck in there is regarding taxes, but any questions on taxes? Okay, good.
We'll
That means
have
we should-
an update on taxes come August. I
Yeah,
think. When we have it at Money Matters, it's a little on the late side. Several of you are going to be able to file that postcard. It's literally 5 questions. I already have a video ready to go on how to show you how to do that. Key Biscayne and Debonair, you guys are going to hire CPAs to take care of your taxes. You'll be in great shape. So I don't think we need to go into it anymore. And these are
And these
the,
are the compliance requirements.
you know what's not on those compliance requirements, Mr. Montes? Insurance.
I know something that changed.
What's that?
Oh. I'll be there. We need to add that in there.
Here's good. Key Biscayne's good. Miami, New Orleans, good. My newbies, I hadn't talked insurance yet because I didn't want to scare you.
Yes,
But
just for the record, I'm sure the Madam President has been checking everybody's PTA as we're here, probably my own PTA as well, just to make sure we're in compliance.
that's what I do. The thing about insurance is if you think that the budget and the fiscal year are confusing, our insurance year runs November 1st to October 31st. And the reason why is so that PTAs, when they start in the new year, if they haven't got $175 in the bank to buy their insurance, they've got time to make a little bit of money so that they can purchase that insurance. Insurance is $175 a year compared to the cost of insurance. If you were not affiliated as PTA, insurance runs about $500 a year for $1 million liability. For Key Biscayne and Devonair, I hope you're also considering bonding insurance. Bonding insurance protects you against two things. It protects you against being sued as an individual, as a volunteer for making a bad decision. And if you get if you have property, for example, Southwood Middle School had a closet that had probably $40,000 in spiritware in there. They had a open window. It was a vented window actually, and they thought it would be safe. And sure enough, we had a hurricane. It poured into that window all night, all weekend long, and destroyed all that property. We did not have property insurance. So guess who was responsible for replacing it all? The PTA. It did not get covered under the school because it's not considered school property. So the other thing is insurance against fraud and theft. If you're in that range, and I'm specifically speaking to Key Biscayne and Devonair because you're large enough that you might want to consider expanding your insurance coverage to include those things. Because if that happens, then you just have a $500 deductible. The insurance company, after investigating the claim and making sure you're doing business well, will pay you back whatever's been lost. And then
also under your umbrella.
They will hire the lawyers to go after whoever it is that made it lost.
And is that also under your umbrella, Ms. West?
Yes, it's on the insurance form. The 175 covers the basic $1 million liability for everybody. That's required by the school board. But there's like 4 other options on there. And again,
we paid 225 this year, so I'm assuming we have a little bit more coverage then.
Yeah, you must have. All right, ladies and gentlemen, are there any last questions? I will make sure that everybody has a copy of the kit of materials, especially this late in the year. They don't always send them out right away because they're assuming everybody who I've given new officers information on is actually for next year. Ms. Oxidine.
Yes, I have a quick question. Will we get a copy of your presentation you did this evening?
Absolutely.
Yes, please.
Thank you. And it was another question. Oh, geez. Oh, I have another question. What are your suggestions on, because we're in a high school and you know how it is, it's a little bit different, challenging, but it's been very difficult to try to recruit another treasurer. This has been going on for years. any suggestions on how we can get more parent participation to be part of the board, specifically the treasurer?
For you, I have a very specific recommendation. Staff members at Miami-Norland High School can't be treasurers on your board. But what about staff members at Norland Middle across the street? And vice versa. I'm supposed to be talking with Lisa Osby about getting Norland Middle back up and on its feet. Maybe I should bring you and Miss Johnson in on that discussion.
Oh, okay.
How's
I
that
would
sound?
love to.
Because Lisa
Because
works
that's-
across the street and she's desperate to get Norland Middle going, but she can't be the treasurer. She has the same problem you do. Is, you know, it's mostly a core of staff at Norland Middle that want to get it rolling again, but they can't run that treasury because of our contracts.
Right.
I'll be honest. Okay, George, put your fingers in your ears. I'm the second signer at Dupuy Elementary down the street because I have every intention of grabbing one of those staff members to be the second signer at HML PTSA. So I can get my vice president and secretary off my bank account. I can't be on the bank account. I'm a staff member.
Right. Right.
My president's my AP. My secretary is my ESAC chair.
And my daughter's been graduated from Miami-Norland Senior High School since year 2000. That's how long I've been.
You were a community volunteer when we met in 2007.
Okay.
I got you. All right,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, George and I have to get some checks signed tonight. Are you home? Yeah, you're home because you're on Catherine's computer.
Yeah, I'm home. I'm gonna be leaving my house in 5 minutes, and I will let you know when I'm close to you, which will be about 45 minutes
Because
from now.
Victoria
Give or
wants to
take.
check so that she can get her bank account opened.
Okay,
Are you gonna,
we're getting it
Miss-
done tonight.
Ms. West, are you gonna send us the recording as well?
Yes, I will, but I did put in the chat box the recording from last fall when we did a COVID-friendly audit presentation where most of this audit stuff had come from. So I will be seeing you, Patricia, on the 26th, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Are we hosting that for you? Or are you going to host your own?
I think we can host. We have all the
Good night,
full
everybody.
capability
I'll
and
see you, Ms.
everything.
West, in a little bit.
Bye, George. Hey,
I-
I'll call you on the road because we may need to meet somewhere else. And I'll tell
Okay.
you why.
Secret location, no problem. Bye.
And Ms. Oxidine and everybody else, the county council Zoom account is available to anyone who needs to borrow it. Right before I got on this meeting tonight, Miami-Dade Center for Modern Languages, I opened up a Zoom for them. The president logged on, I made her the host, I waved goodbye, and I logged off. She's comfortable with the Zoom platform, but they didn't have the funds to buy a Zoom account. And they were locked on that 40 minutes. So she came to a meeting and she said something about, yeah, I have to be efficient at my meetings because I only have 40 minutes. And I was like, oh, we can take care of that problem.
Yeah.
So I've probably hosted her 5 or 6 times and that we've got it down to a science. 15 minutes before the time of her meeting, we both log on. I turn over hosting, wave goodbye, log off. So we have a business account. We're spending $3,500 a year on our Zoom account. And I think it will be a constant expense for us from now on. Because we can Zoom, meet, go to meeting, any of those platforms, as long as you can hear everybody, if they wish to speak. You don't have to necessarily see everybody. You can use that now from now on. There's no limit. They used to make us They actually were going to make us meet once in person a year. And now they've even taken that away. Now, that having been said, when we can meet again, it's always best to do an in-person meeting because there's less confusion and there's less trolling. I don't know a better way to say it. People are nicer in person than they will be on a computer. That's just the world. So, any last questions, ladies and ladies, I should say, because all the gentlemen have left. All right. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Give
Thank
me a
you so
couple of
much.
days, 'cause I
Good night.
literally have
Thank
to.
you. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.